$250,000 a year, you could probably, still go to the movies every now and then. But what I'm telling you, or I'm trying to explain, is this looks different if the Republican marketing slogan, if you will, is that we want to get rid of your income tax. That resonates out of the neighborhoods,
Right.
We want to get rid of your income taxes. Now, the response usually has been, yes, but there will be a concurrent raise in sales tax. I addressed that with Republican legislators, and they say that's not going to happen. It's not even their long-distance plan of 5 to 6 years.
But it is in the Senate bill.
Let me finish.
It is in the Senate bill, though.
Yeah, okay. And please bring that up again. The goal with the flat tax is to eliminate income taxes in 5 years. That's really what it is.
Right.
So you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, okay. If you want to eliminate income tax in 5 years, income tax now brings in half of all the state budget.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where are you going to get the rest of that?
Well, and I'll tell you what they think. They're going to force the cities and the counties to tax themselves. If you're a wealthy county like Johnson County, that shouldn't be a big problem. But here in Webster County or Calhoun or some of the rural counties, that's a problem. A number of years ago, and I don't remember the man's name, he's deceased, but he was the head of Des Moines Waterworks. What was his name?
Bill.
Bill, yes. Bill. He, as a matter of fact, I went down to Des Moines for the 15th anniversary of the then Iowa Policy Project, and he was a featured speaker.
Yeah.
And it was brought up at the time, why didn't Des Moines Waterworks sue more than just Calhoun, Sac, and I can't remember what the other county was. And Bill answered, frankly, it's because these counties are low population counties that probably can't fight back against the lawsuit. Of course,
I don't think he quite said that. I think the mainly thing was they were the ones that were polluting the Raccoon River.
Well, the
Raccoon River happened to run through those counties and the Des Moines a little further over. That's why you sue the ones that were putting material into the river that you were taking your water for your water supply.
Now, so, David, I refuse to believe that a man as sharp as, oh gosh, what the heck was his name?
Yeah, I'm having trouble.
Yeah, Bill, long-haired guy,
Yeah.
I talked with him before. He's okay. Anyway, I find it hard to believe that just coincidentally, all three counties that he wanted to sue were poor counties.
No. They were all counties along the Raccoon, right?
Well, yeah, but they're also
they get the water from the Raccoon, and the Raccoon's polluting their water supply, and they look upstream, and what are the counties?
So it is just a coincidence that they were.
No, it's not just a coincidence. They also they're in this area called the Des Moines Lobe, one of the formations, the geologic formations in Iowa, and they were on the Raccoon, and they had these districts, these drainage districts that were draining directly into that river. And the drainage districts in those counties were run by the supervisors, and that's why the suit took place there. Maybe he wanted to be mean to small counties. I don't know, but that's not necessarily the reason that they were sued.
His name was Bill Stowe, by the way.
It was Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it wasn't me. It was a mutual acquaintance of ours down there in Iowa City area that was formerly on the school board of West Branch. That guy.
That guy.
Yeah,
Mike. You just said it. Okay, good.
Mike Owen. Our friend Mike Owen.
Thank you, Mike, for bailing both of us out.
Thank you. He's younger than we are anyway. So,
that's right.
Anyway, so Art Cullen of the Storm Lake Times won a Pulitzer Prize about his big expose that Farm Bureau was funding lawyers to fight back on the behalf of these counties against the Des Moines Waterworks. And I'd been talking about it for months on the air. I don't know where Bill thought this was some huge expose. I had people from the Farm Bureau come in here and say, yeah, we're funding it. I
mean, you should have got the Pulitzer.
I should have got the Pulitzer. Well. Art over there in Storm Lake probably needs it. I'd like to see local papers thrive or at least survive.
No, but can we get back? Let's get back. Yeah.
I'm ready.
We both agree on that, too. We totally agree on that.
Yeah.
All right. So getting back to saying, well, the poor people, they're paying 6.5%. They aren't. It's a graduated tax. So the first part of the tax is around 4%, and then it goes up. Only people paying 6.5% are richer people. So no, they do not pay that much. And in fact, it's interesting that when it comes to the income tax in Iowa, because Ronald Reagan and sort of conservative Republicans decided it would be a very good thing to have poor people try to work hard, right? So they put together this thing called the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Yeah.
That said that even though you're only making $7 at the time or $4 an hour, we're going to make sure that you get something back. You are not going to pay tax on that small amount of money. And in fact, you're going to get money back because you're not making enough. That is if you had kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it was dependent on, one kid, how much it would be. If you had 2 kids, how much it would be. So that the really low income people are getting something back. It's a refundable credit. That is, if you don't owe that much, you actually get a check back from the state. That's why this is just going right after poor people. You get rid of the income tax, but they weren't paying it anyway. And in fact, they were getting a credit. So you want to make this particular tax flat. Why don't you make the property tax flat? Why don't you make sales tax flat? Well, you don't want to do that because the people you're representing, and you generally say this, rich white people, they are complaining more about income taxes, so they get the break, and low-income people get the opposite.
Well, I'm not going to let the Democrats off entirely. I've argued on air for years that those making less than $50,000 a year shouldn't pay income tax at all.
Yeah, well, it's
instead,
it's not that low, but it is not that high, but there is an amount that you don't have to pay anything. Sure, and it's just something like $9,000, $11,000.
Yeah, and who makes that, really?
That's the first part. The point is there are so many exemptions and deductions. We've now moved, because of the tax changes in the last few years, to a way that we calculate our income the way the feds do. And the feds give this very large deduction to everybody, $27,000 for a couple. So you don't pay on the first $27,000. And if you're old, like I am, you also can get $12,000 for a couple, $6,000 for an individual, for the taxes. The income that comes from retirement income. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also get this sweet deal because we're old, that we get to deduct our health tax, our health insurance from that too. When you put all of those things together, right now, a couple can make $90,000 in Iowa and pay no taxes. So for the governor to say, here's what I'm doing for you, I'm taking off all taxes on retirement income, because you already took it off for Social Security. You already have this gigantic $27,000 that everybody doesn't have to pay tax on.
Right.
That's how you can get to $90,000 right now. $90,000 right now is what you can make and pay no income taxes in Iowa. So any increase in taking the tax off anything else like retirement income doesn't do anything for middle class people. It is only for the person who maybe did some good things in his life and worked hard at something, but he's still getting $250,000. He's the one that gets the tax break. It is for the rich, period.
Well, I've often maintained that I'm the only one in the state of Iowa, maybe Colin Gordon, who cares about working people in the state of Iowa. The emphasis is always on the middle class, and I realize the definition of middle class in the state of Iowa is different than the rest of the country. It really is. You've got people out. You've got people out at Walmart making $15 an hour with benefits, and they think they're middle class.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and
they
they used to make 12.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so
yeah,
what?
So anyway, when it comes to taxes, the whole notion of let's make the tax more fair by making it flat, I'll buy that as long as you make all taxes flat, which would then require you to raise the income tax, not lower it, so that everybody pays the same amount. So rich people don't pay much in the way of sales tax because they save so much.
Oh, I know accountants that made millions of dollars by preventing people who make millions of dollars from paying any taxes at all. There's some pretty high price. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of tax attorneys and accountants in this town who are taking care of the money, and they're not taking care of mine because I don't have enough money for them to worry about.
Or me. Yeah.
That's right. Well, that's.
So anyway, but back to taxes. This is a tax change for the rich, period. And if you want to look at black versus white, it's for white middle class. It's upper middle class and really rich people generally who are not people of color.
What, are you going to play the race card with me now?
No, I mean, I could. I'll hold off. I don't need the race card to win this argument.
Hey, no, but you dropped it out there anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. Yeah, Peter Fisher just did something on that just to say, let's look at race and see what happens. And it's what you'd expect.
Oh, there's a sure winner every time. Let's play the race card. I suppose you're going to tell me I'm a white supremacist and my starving Irish ancestors who came here with nothing are white supremacists and privileged people. I've had these arguments before, believe me.
Well, but let's look at the flat tax. It ain't flat. And if you try to make the income tax portion of it flat, you make the whole thing worse. Poor people pay even a higher percentage of their income. And again, Mike, if you said that they want to get rid of the income tax,
yes,
and right now it's half the state budget. If you want to keep doing kind of the same stuff you're doing now, where do you get the money?
Well, where do you get it?
15% it would be your sales tax.
Well, that's right.
To make up, right? I mean, just figure that. It's half, right?
But
raise
again,
the sales tax to 14%.
Aren't they, again, and Governor Branstad did this just for his last term as governor. He reduced property taxes and told all the cities that they were going to get a backfill. Well, that backfill is just about over.
It's over. No, yeah. They lied. They just lied. And that's what they're doing again. And there are three different tax bills, so it's hard to keep them all, straight. But the one that the Senate wants to do, and that's the one where they're going to put, they claim to put a little money into outdoor recreation. That's why the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation is on board on this thing. And that one actually does raise the sales tax. They say, look at you, and if you have a local option sales tax in your town like Cedar Rapids does, we're getting rid of it. You lose it. Yeah, you can't get the money anymore. We're going to raise, but at the same time we do that, we're going to raise sales tax from the state portion from 6 to 7. And then what we're going to do is give you back money. Yeah, you bet.
All right.
Just like the backfill. You're right. We'll give it back to you. We promise. Okay, we promise. No, I mean, if you want to get rid of the sales tax, if you want to get rid of the income tax in the state of Iowa, and you have a $8 billion budget, and half of all the money in that budget comes from income tax, then you gotta raise sales tax or impose a state property tax to make up for that. And if you did it just on sales, we're talking 14, 15%. How about that?
Well,
you want to live in that state?
Well, here. Now, you know what the deal is. You're pretty passionate on this subject here. I'll tell you, I'm thinking you really got to get a job in talk radio. But the problem is we're supported by business, and business doesn't support liberal talk radio. Anyway, what they would want to do again is throw this back on the cities and in the cities in the state of Iowa.
Well, why would the cities have any money? I mean,
well, that's what they want here. Of course, what they want is for the cities then to raise their property taxes or their sales taxes or whatever it is to cover the deficit, because that was the plan all along. And once the cities realize, and all of us realize, we can get by for less, if we realize that in the next 5 to 10 years, well, then the Republicans have triumphed. They have successfully changed the attitude toward taxes. You understand?
Yeah,
You know that.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so we'll then have the cities having to increase their taxes, and smaller counties will just not have schools.
Yeah, that's probably right. They don't want to say that, but there's been so much school consolidation out here anyway. I mean, school districts that were prominent for many years, especially out here northwest of Fort Dodge. I'll tell you, that's a grim landscape. I mean, eastern Iowa is more heavily populated, and we're still a very rural state. But let me tell you, the state of Iowa would just as soon not deal with this many school systems. And they don't even want 99 counties. They want like 50.
Yeah.
But
so they don't want 300 school districts. They want fewer.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is, where are the people going to go to school? I mean, do you send them either to Fort Dodge or Sioux City? Maybe.
Well, here's
Manson. Now, Manson couldn't have a school if this thing went through.
Well, here's the answer. The parents would have to figure that out for themselves. You know, self-reliance and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, teach them at home.
Teach them at home. There's people around here that do that, you know.
Oh, there are. No, there are several that can do that, and many of them have good reasons. Many of them have, other reasons, but that's right. But boy, sometimes you got to get out into the world, and I can't imagine that's a good thing for a kid for the long term.
No, I don't agree with that. I long for the days when rural Iowa was a strong place, but I don't know. There were a lot more farms when I was younger, and now, in fact, I talked with a pork producer yesterday, and he said when he first went to pork producer banquets at the state level, there were hundreds of people. I think state level or county level, I can't remember, but they'd fill up. I know what he said now. They'd fill up the Starlight Ballroom out at here in town. Now, you've been out there because I've had lunch with you out there, and Mike and both. But anyway, they would fill up the main lounge at the Starlight. Now there's like 15 show up, and that's all the pork producers we have.
Oh yeah, and it really has. I mean, that's been a real revolution.
You
have to go back to about, maybe it was 1980, 1985, something like that, where you still had something like 70,000 farms that raised hogs, and now you have 5.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And if you look where all the hog lots at, they're up at the northwest part of the state, because over there and around Des Moines, they don't want the hog lots. They'll take the pork, but they don't want they don't want any of that stuff. Anyway, this is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I'm talking with David Osterberg of CommonGoodIowa.org. Check it out. What is your fear in this? My fear is that they're going to pass this, that they're going to then discover, oh my golly, all that big surplus that we had, that $1 billion, went away pretty fast. And it didn't come from our own taxes. It came from what Biden gave to the state, and Trump gave to the state. And they then say, well, gee whiz, I don't know what to do. Let's raise sales tax. Let's figure out, let's close some schools. Let's do what Kansas did, which was a complete disaster, where they even got rid of Brownback. He got overridden on his veto because there used to be 3 parties in Kansas: the crazy Republicans, the reasonable Republicans, and the Democrats. And after Brownback, the crazies just lost everything. Yeah. They are no longer there, and they have a Democratic governor. It was such a failure. It was such a fiasco. But in the process, they closed schools a couple of weeks early because there was no money. That's what you get with their plan. Well, I had to laugh. I can't remember which. I think it was 60 Minutes. That's the one news magazine show I still watch. But they had an interview with a Kansas businessman over what he was, the idea was that, also was that we were going to cut taxes to stimulate the economy.
Yeah.
Business would take this money and reinvest it. And this guy said, he was asked, are you going to reinvest this money? And he laughed and said, hell no, I'm going to stick it in my pocket.
Yeah, right. Or now I can afford that house in Florida.
Yeah, or any of those things.
Yeah.
Things, that's for sure. Anyway, David Osterberg is our guest. We just got a minute here. Is there anything we should know as we close here, David?
No, it's that I'm right and the other people
But
are
you're
wrong. That's all you
always
need
right.
to remember.
That's the thing I noticed in you most. That's why you should be a talk show host, because we're always right. We're never wrong. Thank you, David. Thank you very much.
Hey, great talking.
All right.
Bye-bye.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. This program being brought to you by Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters at 612 South 32nd Street here in Fort Dodge. You may contact Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters by calling 576-6481 or online at www.fdwater.com.
Blue Ribbon Pelham Waters, your water pro since 1949.
Do you
asked to use the same upstairs areas that journalists can use in the Iowa Senate. Unfortunately, I broke my ankle a few weeks ago, so I'm not going up to the Capitol right now. I'm hobbling around, and I'll be mostly I'm watching the live streams and reporting from my home in the Des Moines area rather than at the Capitol. But at some point when I'm able to be more mobile again, I do plan to be down at the State House a bit.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, you can see what's happening in the state capitol on, as she just mentioned, as Laura just mentioned, by live streaming it. What's the address to get there? I have it in my Yahoo email, but that's where I go.
Well, it's legis.iowa.gov. And it's not perfect. There are pages where you can try to find live streams of some Iowa House and Senate committee meetings. The sound quality is not always great, especially not all the speakers go up to the microphone. And then whenever there's debate on the Iowa House or Senate floor, there's a video archive of that. It's live streamed and there's a video archive. And it's useful. I mean, I do use it a lot. I will say it's not as good as being there because the camera is on the person speaking. So you can't see anything else happening in the chamber. And sometimes if you're in the chamber, you can see who's talking to whom. Somebody went over and was, having a word with somebody else on a bill. And so there's a lot that you don't see when you're watching the live stream, but it's still, it's much, much better than nothing. And you can get a pretty decent idea of the legislative debate from watching it online.
So that's legis.ia./gov or .gov?
.iowa.gov.
IOWA.
And when you're on that, that's the front page of the legislative website. And then you can look there are tabs for committees, and under the committees, you should be able to find links to when they have live streams of the meetings. And then also for the Iowa Senate and the Iowa House, there are links you can click for audio and video feed when they're in session. Because this early in the year, there's not a whole lot of floor debate. Most of the action is happening in the committees, and then the floor debate will happen later. A big legislative deadline is coming up here in a couple of weeks, and any bills that are not through an Iowa House or Senate committee most bills in any case, if they aren't through a committee, will be considered dead for the year. So that's why right now there's a big rush to have all kinds of different bills being considered in the committee level. And then later there will be much more House and Senate floor debate.
Just got off the phone a few minutes ago with David Osterberg of the what used to be Iowa Policy Project, now Common Good Iowa. And he is definitely opposed to attempts by the Republicans to convert us to a flat tax. And the idea of the flat tax in the beginning is to what the Republicans say is a more fair and understandable approach to taxation. And in their long-term plan, from what I understand, is to abolish the income tax altogether. I'm going to go right ahead. I'm sorry.
No, the Common Good Iowa is a great resource. I highly recommend their website, www.commongoodiowa.org. And they have a graphic actually about this the income tax cut plan and the flat tax. And they have a graphic that shows at different income levels how much of the tax that you pay is an income tax versus sales tax versus property tax. And what you see is the top 1%, 5% income level, those people are paying, most of the taxes that they pay are income taxes. So if you bring the income tax way down, the huge benefit will go to the people at the very top, the people making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. The people near the bottom 20% of income, and then the next 20% of income, those people are already paying fairly little in income taxes already. They're paying much more in sales taxes and property taxes as a share of their income. If you think about it, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and spending most of what you bring in, you're going to be paying a lot more in sales taxes than someone making $250,000 a year who is not spending the bulk of what they're taking home and not paying sales tax on that. So the thing is, the income tax system is the only thing that is progressive in the sense of based on your ability to pay. Everything else, property taxes and sales taxes, are not based on your ability to pay. And so when Republicans say, it would be more fair to just have a flat income tax, really that just makes the system that much more unfair to poor people. They'll be paying they'll still be paying much more in property taxes and sales taxes as a share of their income. But all of a sudden, the wealthy people won't be paying their fair share of the income tax. So there's a little bit of sleight of hand, and Common Good Iowa has created some graphics that illustrate this much better than I can describe it on the air.
As a matter of fact, you could go to my Facebook page, either my personal Facebook page, AM 1400 KVFD, or the radio station Facebook page, and find the very graph that Laura's talking about. Mike Owen of Common Good Iowa sent it to me by email a little earlier today, and I used it when I was talking with David Osterberg. Well, the progressive income tax, of course, was started early in the 20th century with the idea that those who benefit most from our society and our economic system should pay more for it. Is the flat tax, in your opinion, going to do away with that idea?
Well, yeah, I mean, it does do away with that idea, because it says that no matter what your income is, we're not going to tax you based on your ability to pay. We're just going to tax everybody 4%. And that may sound fair, but again, it's not fair to the people. If you're making $50,000 a year, you'll get a very small benefit from that. Your current income tax payment is probably not much more than 4% anyway. Whereas if you're making $150,000 a year, you're going to save a lot of money, thousands of dollars. And again, and it's not even, it's not clear that these tax cuts will stimulate the economy. The state of Kansas had massive tax cuts in the last decade, and then they grew more slowly than all of their neighbors. And one of the issues is that when you give huge tax breaks to people who are already very wealthy, they just sock it away.
Yeah.
They don't go out and spend it on goods and services in their community. They don't need to. They don't need to spend that much money.
Well, at least the Republicans have the decency not to say that anymore. I mean, the refrain used to be, oh, yes, we need to cut taxes, and then business or whoever will take that money and reinvest it in the community. No, they don't. No, they don't. If
not the way they're cutting taxes. Now, there are tax cuts, for instance, the earned income tax credit, which is designed that mainly supports the working poor or working lower middle class, so people who are earning wages and just barely getting by. And the extra tax credits are, for instance, the child tax credit, which has just run out recently, but which the Democrats passed last year as part of the American Rescue Plan. Those actually do stimulate the economy, because the overwhelming benefit goes to people who will just spend any additional few $100s that they get, they will spend it. So that actually does help the economy.
The stimulus by Joe Biden, I went through that pretty fast.
Right. Well, a lot of people did, and I remember we had to replace our clothes dryer last year, and we were lucky that there was something in stock, because a lot of people were buying home appliances or doing other work on their homes with that money. And of course, if they're doing work, I mean, that's money that they have to spend in their communities. That's not money. I mean, if you're doing work on your house, it's almost inevitably it's going to help somebody, some sort of tradesperson or business owner in your area.
Okay. Yeah. Laura Bellin's our guest. She's with bleedingheartland.com. Check out the blog. I've heard so many different, you just mentioned the income tax for working class people is usually around 4%. I've heard 6.5. I've heard all the way up to 12%. It's hard to know. Where did you get the 4% figure?
Well, you have to look at what the exemptions are. Like, few people are paying. Sometimes you can look at what the income tax rate is on paper, but that doesn't reflect what most people are actually paying once they have the standard deduction, and there are some other deductions. There's another example of this is the Republican plan. They want to exempt retirement income from state income tax, and that sounds like a great idea, but a certain amount, I believe it's about $12,000 of retirement income in Iowa, is already exempt from state income tax. So if you're a senior living on a pretty modest Social Security check, you're already paying little to nothing in terms of income tax. Whereas if you've got a huge 401k and you're getting a lot of money that way, you might be paying a significant state income tax. So it's a little, you might look at it and say, oh, but retirement income is taxed at such and such a level in Iowa, but a lot of people aren't paying nearly that rate because there are exemptions already in the code that they can take advantage of. It is very complex.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Yeah, I got to spend a little more time with this because I depend on our state legislators, and they do a pretty good job, and a number of other sources, including David Osberg and yourself. And I certainly do a lot of reading, but I'm getting out here in the woods with this tax business, to be honest with you.
The Common Good Iowa people, Peter Fisher, Mike Owen, David Osterberg, they really know their stuff. They've been working on tax policy in Iowa for 20 plus years. So they have a very in-depth understanding of how these different parts of the code work in relationship to one another.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Osterberg, of course, has his deal is ag economics, and Fisher's a longtime economist at the University of Iowa. He's emeritus now. He's retired, but he's still very active. And yeah, they've been on this show for, I don't know, over 10 years, easily over 10 years. And it's always been great to have them on. Let's talk about the ethanol mandate. Are you up to speed on that or not?
Yes, well, it seems to be on a fast track. I was a little bit surprised because last year this stalled and it never got to a floor vote. And I thought that it was going to be what I call the clash of the business lobby titans in the legislature, but it looks like the ag lobby has pretty much won out over the trucking companies and the fuel retailers who don't like this bill. It passed the Iowa House last week by 82 votes to 10, so that was fairly overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. Fort Dodge is a trucking town still. We had a lot of truck companies here, most notably now Decker Trucking, but we've always had a lot of trucking companies in our town. and of course, most grain is moved in the state of Iowa by trucks. So I'm a little. And last I heard about this mandate it was in trouble for that reason, is because there was a coalition of trucking companies and farmers who are two very powerful organizations in the state that were opposed to it for the reasons you just mentioned.
The farmers want it. The groups that don't want it are the fuel, like the Casey's General Stores, the fuel retailers, the truckers, and the Koch brothers group, Americans for Prosperity. They're very against this ethanol mandate. And I don't know if you've ever spoken with John Norwood. He's the Democrat who just announced last week that he's running for Secretary of Agriculture. Or rather, I'm sorry, he announced this week on Monday. I spoke to him recently and I asked him about this because the current Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Naig, is of course all on board with this ethanol mandate.
Oh yeah.
And John said, we are not going to be able to stop the electric vehicle revolution. It's coming. So, we can pretend that we can do these things, but he said trying to force small rural gas stations to sell a few more gallons of ethanol is not really going to move the needle at all. And the trend, clearly a consumer vehicle that's moving toward electric vehicles, that's not something that Iowans are going to be able to stop from happening. And he thinks that what we should be doing if we want to support the biofuels industry is really try to focus on aviation, rail, and marine. Those are areas where the battery technology is not nearly as developed, and so they can't really have electric trains. I mean, it's just not realistic, and they consume a ton of diesel. So if we could get them to consume more biodiesel, then that would be a way to support the biofuels industry without trying to put a new mandate on gas stations, especially since, I mean, it's kind of funny when Republicans, usually they say let the market decide, but all of a sudden they don't want the market to decide. They want to dictate what kind of gas, what kind of fuel business owners have to sell, and what people have to buy.
I don't know why anybody bothers to say that. I've been saying for many, many years that it's not as bad as it used to be, but Iowa's been a socialist state since the Great Depression. Come on. Can we get honest here?
Socialist, just for a few sectors, though.
Just for
not for most of the sectors.
No. It's always been we'll take some socialism over here. Thank you very much, but you guys get to go to work.
But I was really surprised. Only 7 Republicans and 3 Democrats in the Iowa House voted against that ethanol mandate bill. I thought there was a lot more opposition to it than that, and so it tells me that those business lobby groups, the trucking company and the Casey's General Store, they don't have as much clout as I thought they had, at least compared to the ag and the renewable fuels lobby.
Well, as of last week or early this week even, this thing was dead. This was over with. But all of a sudden it changes.
Yeah, I mean, last year it was tough. There is something new in the bill that I think it was seen as a small concession to rural gas stations. And I don't know how much it really changes it substantively or if it was, or exactly what happened. I mean, the governor, this is a priority that the governor wants. She wanted it last year, but she introduced it again this year. And so that may have been sometimes behind the scenes at the Capitol, you can't really tell. There are a lot of things, a lot of policies the governor supports, but you don't always know what her people are really pushing for behind the scenes. And I think that there must have been a fairly strong push from the governor's office that she wants this bill on her desk. Now, it hasn't been voted on in the Iowa Senate, but I think given that 82-10 vote in the House, I'll be pretty shocked if it doesn't sail through the Iowa Senate.
All right. Laura Bellin's our guest. She's with Bleeding Heartland. Laura, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. If you have a burning desire here, please let us know what it is.
Oh, well, there's a lot going on in the legislature, but the education bills, I think, are the most concerning right now because Iowa has a teacher shortage already, and almost every education bill that the Republicans are pushing in the House and Senate is going to make that worse. It makes it more alienating for teachers, more money moving from the public schools to the private schools, and I just think that it's taking us in the wrong direction. And I think in particular this, whether you want to call it vouchers or education savings accounts, I think that could threaten some rural school districts. They may end up losing enough funding that there just may be more consolidation. I know there's already been so much consolidation in our rural school districts. But
I think though that's
a really tough one.
I think that's the plan. You know, we have too many counties. A lot of people believe we still have 99 counties. A lot of people would like to see it 50. And as far as the school districts are concerned, I mean, I don't know if there's a willingness at the state level to keep pouring money into a very rural area school district. And if you want your children to go to school in that area, you're going to have to worry about it yourself because I think more and more of these smaller schools are going to close. They've been closing since the 60s, and that's going to continue to happen. I mean, the farm equipment got big. We don't have near as many farmers or any of those things. It's just call it progress if you wish or whatever. But I really think that there is an effort underway just to do away with some of these school districts.
Well, and it's sad. I attended the West Des Moines Public Schools, so it was a fairly large school district, but I have a lot of friends who went to small town schools, and there are a lot of benefits to being in smaller schools. And I think it's very sad. I mean, a lot of families, they don't want to put their kids on a school bus for 45 minutes to an hour each way to school. And so it's going to affect the life. I mean, when a town loses its school, a lot of people don't want to live there anymore. I mean, it's just the death knell of a town. So I think it's very sad, and I think that I would like to see the legislature focus on things they can do to support public schools and not more things that will undermine the schools and make the teacher shortage harder. I should say also that it's very difficult sometimes for these smaller school districts to compete for teachers because the larger, especially the large suburban districts in the Des Moines area, they can offer higher salaries than smaller school districts can. So if you have a chance to teach in Waukee or Johnston or Ankeny and make a lot more money than in the South Central Calhoun School District, you're probably going to do that. And so that makes that teacher shortage, that's just another thing that makes it more difficult. And since the Republicans destroyed the collective bargaining rights in 2017, the school districts, the smaller school districts, they can't make up for it by saying like, well, we'll offer you, we'll have better benefits because the teachers can't negotiate for anything other than their base wage. So they can't, the union in some of these smaller districts, they can't say, well, give us a better benefit package that will be much more attractive because we know we have lower pay than some of our counterparts.
Well, for years, I advocated to get rid of the right to work law because I come at these things from a worker's perspective. But nobody wanted to hear it. I mean, Democrat or Republican, certainly not Republicans.
Yeah.
But the Democrats didn't want to hear it.
We've had the right to work law since the 40s. So.
Yeah, that's right.
There are Democrats who want to get rid of the right to work law, but I don't think you'd ever have the votes to do that in the legislature.
Oh, no, you don't. Several years ago, I asked that question, and Jack Kibbe was on the panel. He was president of the Senate then. I don't know if you remember Jack or not.
I do remember Jack, sure.
Good guy, always liked him. And he just looked at me and said, Iowa's an anti-labor state. I mean, it just is, front to bottom or top to bottom. And I think I agree with him. I mean, workers in Iowa are just not the type of people, for whatever reason, to join a union or to advocate strongly for unionization.
Well, we decided, the leaders of Iowa decided a long time ago that a low-wage state was the way to go. And so I would have to agree with Jack Kibbe that if we're not a pro-labor state, we're a low-wage state, and that has a lot of problems. I mean, that's one reason why so many young people leave for jobs in Denver or Kansas City or the Twin Cities, because the wages are so low here.
Well, that's right. And I've heard working people talk like this. that, oh God, we kept those union people out of here. They just want our dues and all these sort of things. Yeah, but you're living in a rooming house. how much worse could it be if you paid dues to a union, for God's sake?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a true story. The worker I was talking about lived in a rooming house, and he was patting himself on the back for keeping unions out of there. I
was very surprised when during the John Deere strike in the fall, when the Des Moines Register had a poll in the field, and the vast majority were supportive of the strikers. And I was surprised by that. I mean, I was supportive of the strikers, but I had the impression that Iowans as a whole were not going to be sympathetic, but they were, that they felt that the company, which was making billions of dollars in profits, that they should share more of the wealth with their workforce. And so I wonder if maybe the pendulum is swinging a little bit here.
Maybe so. I mean, more attention is being focused on income inequality, and I hope that continues. Laura Bellin has been our guest. Laura, thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Of course. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Is 3:31.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
For KVFD News, I'm Brooke Bickford. A website that seeks to find missing people in Iowa is seeing upgrades that may make that process a little easier. Radio Iowa reports that the Iowa Department of Public Safety is relaunching iowamissingpersons.com. Medina Romnovic says the site now has a comprehensive search feature where people can search by area or by physical specifications. From Fort Dodge, Greg Howell has been missing since New Year's Day of 2005. And from Webster County, Sandra Vanderhoff has been missing since September of 1986. Romnovic says there is no mandatory time someone has to be gone before they can go on the site, and no limit to how long